Call to order the September 13th, 2022 Conservation Commission Board meeting, and we'll start by Pledge Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first and foremost, we don't have any discussion items this evening, so we'll start with the first hearing, a septic repair for David Swift, 71 Forsythia Lane.
I've got some reviews plans here, easy to read.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Appreciate that.
Can't make it any bigger.
For the record, my name is George Ayub. I designed the septic system at the subject location 71 Forsythia Lane. Currently, there is an existing house, 4-bedroom, and the existing leaching field is failing. And we're proposing a new leaching field. The work will be outside the 100-foot buffer zone. I'm trying to, as you can see here, I'm trying to save the tank, which is located about 10 or 12 feet within the 100-foot buffer zone. And all the work will be outside the 100-foot. Basically, we are maintaining the 100-foot separation to the well and meeting the town and state requirements. And we're not asking for any variance. We'll be using proposing silt sock on the southerly side. This is where the wetland is very close. And that's it, basically. It's a straightforward project. Removing the existing leaching field and replacing the new leaching field.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members, David Swift, 71 Forsythia Lane. This request for determination of applicability presented by George Ayub. Report dated September 9th, 2022. I believe this is pending Board of Health's approval. Site visit was also on September 9th, 2022. Description of the work: the owner has filed to propose a sewage disposal system to replace the old system. The new leaching area will be constructed in the front yard area of the existing single-family home and outside the 100-foot buffer zone. The minimal work in the 100-foot buffer zone to replace the 4-inch sewage line and exposing the existing septic tank will not cause any adverse effects. So basically, they're exposing the tank to get the new line into that tank for use in this repair. Very little work in the buffer zone, as you can see. Recommendations: the Westport Conservation Commission should approve the minor work in the buffer zone with a negative box 3 determination. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from the table?
Well, you got a retained pipe and retain the septic tank. What's new? Is it the pipe from the septic tank to the new
Correct.
kitchen area? Okay,
Correct.
not much.
And this doesn't need any Board of Health approval, does it?
It will have a review by them,
Okay.
but I think it would meet their concerns.
Do we want to make a motion pending Board of Health?
Do you know if it's been through Board of Health yet, George?
I believe he did say anything, I don't think he has any issue with it.
Doesn't hurt to say pending Board of Health, Mr. Chairman,
Yep, okay.
just in case.
I'll make a motion to approve the minor work in the buffer zone with a negative box 3 determination pending Board of Health.
Go ahead.
Bert, second?
A second.
Bert, second. Kevin? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you, George. We'll see you again.
We have a continuance from last meeting. Robert Taylor, an NOI for map 55, lot 54, Drift Road, construct single-family dwelling with associated grading and utilities in the riverfront area and buffer zone. Okay, good evening for the record. Steve Gioso with Civil and Environmental Consultants. With me tonight is the applicant, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor actually bought 2 parcels of land here on Drift Road. You'll see the piece on the west side of the street is an existing dwelling and part of the land that was acquired. This piece is separate and distinct from that is on the east side of Drift Road. And the applicant is proposing, and this land is basically mostly disturbed, an old open field area. It's been a mowed field for many, many years. There's actually an existing cart path that originates here at Drift Road and runs through the property, goes all the way to the shoreline. And there's an old dock, remnants of an old dock down by the water line at the river itself. The property contains several resource areas, as you might expect. We're at the West Fork River, so we have a riverfront area that extends into the site. The 200-foot riverfront area, just make sure I get my right lines, is this shaded line here that runs through the property. This is 200 feet from the actual riverfront zone. There's a marsh area here, and we had Ed Asbezinas flagged the wetlands. There's a delineation along the marsh line here, small isolated pocket here, not connected to the main wetland system. Again, being close to the river, we do have the coastal floodplains that run through the property. We have a velocity zone here and a zone X located here. So, and then there's in between in this lower section of the lot, an AE zone. The property's about 6 acres in size, and as I indicated, primarily, especially near Drift Road, an altered area of the overall landscape. Mr. Taylor would like to construct a single-family home on the property. The single-family home and the other improvements we've kept intentionally up in the upper northwest corner of the property. There is a cemetery, walled-in cemetery area here. There are walls along the edge here and obviously along Drift Road. There's an existing break in the wall here. What we'd like to do is pick up the driveway at that point, which coincides with the existing cart path, bring that in as a shell driveway, so try and keep a more porous nature to the material. A freestanding or a separate garage located here. The main house located in the next section over. A patio or terrace area at the water side or the south side of the dwelling. A small studio. Mr. Taylor is an architect, so having a small studio on site is important for him to have a place from his normal office so he can do some work here on this beautiful piece of property. And then a small boat storage structure located to the east of the proposed dwelling. This property would require a septic system. We do have a nitrogen removal septic system proposed for the site. All of the septic components are out of riverfront area, out of buffer zone, and located in the upland portion of the site. In fact, they're not located in the coastal flood zone either. So and the yellow line represents the 100-foot buffer zone to the marsh area. So you can see the structures here, these 3 structures, the proposed garden area, the patio, they're outside the 100-foot buffer zone, and even the boat storage area is outside the buffer zone. There would be a little bit of grading here and here to create the transition from the level boat storage and the edge of the terrace area that would extend into the buffer zone, but really a minor encroachment into that zone. The FEMA flood zone is here. We have no structures within the FEMA flood zone. Again, a gradual 3-to-1 slope, creating that taper in the FEMA flood zone. So again, no violation of any regulation with that encroachment there. And then the riverfront area, which I indicated earlier, is this shaded line. So you can see the only activity in the riverfront area is a small amount of grading here and a small amount of grading here.
Again, this is previously altered. It's a lot that predates the riverfront regulations. Well below the limitations for alteration within a riverfront area that are allowed by regulation. And again, the applicant has made a pretty strong effort to keep those activities outside of jurisdictional areas. So we think it's a minor buffer zone project. We would characterize it that way. And we do have an erosion control barrier proposed. The erosion control barrier will follow the proposed limit of work, so it's the orange line here. Again, creating that separation and protection during construction of any of the adjacent resource areas. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. We have filed the plans with, one other element that the applicant is incorporating. We're gonna do rain barrels on the property, get the roof drains to collect roof runoff for irrigation of the garden area. As I pointed out earlier, there's a proposed garden area here. So they will be doing some rainwater harvesting as part of the project, and it'll also help minimize some of the impacts on the adjacent waterway. So with that, again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the table before we get to Chris' report?
Yeah, real quick, can you explain where the access is for the driveway as it pertains to the ancient pathway?
So right now, there is a break in the stone wall here and a couple of gate posts. So that currently comes through here, meanders down through the site, and generally comes down all the way down to the dock area here. The dock is really, we're showing it as a dock, the survey crew located, but it's really in poor shape.
Right, but that is still considered a public access way?
I don't know if it's public access, but it's access through the property.
Okay.
That has served this particular parcel of land historically.
Thank you.
So that laneway there, will you be doing enhancements to that down to the river at all?
No.
Okay. And there won't be any paths built from the boathouse to the river, or is it used?
No, there's already that pathway there, so the applicant would utilize that. And,
Okay.
You know, we're not talking about big watercraft coming through here. It's kayaks and canoes, that type of thing.
Okay.
At
Alright.
least at this point in time. Now, again, the applicant may revisit the idea of a dock at some point, but again, that is not contemplated at this time.
Steve, one correction to that. The dock is active. It is, it was permitted and.
Oh, I know it's permanent.
And, but it is active. There's
Yeah,
flood,
it's in-
a ramp and a dock.
Yeah, it's in kind of, it's the weathered condition. Maybe
Yes.
that's the best way to put it, yes.
Thank you, Steve. Chris, you want to do your
Mr.
report?
Chairman, members, Robert Taylor, Carol Burns, map 55, lot 56, Drift Road. This doesn't yet have an address, but I think it's at or near 1051. It's across from 1067. The applicant is being represented by CEC with Steve Giosa here this evening. Report date is September 8th, 2022. The file number for this project with no adverse comments is SE 802650. Description of the work: the applicant has filed for a proposed single-family home and associated grading on the property located on the east branch of the Westport River. Site is south of Hicksbridge Road and across from the Babbitt family estate, which Mr. Taylor owns, also is at 1067 Drift Road. The lot was part of the Babbitt property and predates the Rivers Protection Act. The existing old field area would be developed for a single-family house and site grading in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The wetlands on the site were walked and shown correctly. The site contains a BVW along the salt marsh that has two small isolated farm ponds on either end. The extent of the riverfront is shown measured from mean high water line on the outside edge of the salt marsh. The work for the single-family home will be outside the jurisdiction of the riverfront and buffer zone. The grading for the home and proposed boat shed will extend into these both resource areas. As Steve mentioned, that minor grading. The remaining work is well away from the extent of those resource areas. The owner has taken design of the home driveway and sewage disposal system to keep this activity away from the commission's jurisdiction. In the design, they decided to include a pervious clamshell driveway and a denitrification sewage system. The minor work in the buffer zone and riverfront will require the slope of the grading to be seeded immediately after completion. Erosion controls will be staked in place and will remain until the disturbed areas are stabilized and seeded. Again, as Steve mentioned, there are a few resource areas here. There is buffer zone, riverfront, and flood zone areas. Recommendations for the board this evening. The Westport Conservation Commission should approve this notice of intent with the minor grading work in the buffer and riverfront areas with standard conditions for file number SC 802650.
50.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Chris.
No, just for the record, this topography of this site depicts this house fitting here, almost hidden away from the way the roadway and the hill lays down. So this is like a terraced area, specifically why he chose this, is a perfect setting for the upriver view. So it works to his advantage to where that riverfront doesn't impede on this proposal. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions from the table? Motion?
So I'll move to approve the notice of intent and the minor grading work in the buffer zone and riverfront area with standard conditions.
I second it.
Phil and Bert. All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Chris, do we have Peter Kazenbach?
Yeah, you don't have them with you?
Let's see.
That should be that one,
Is it
right?
this one? Okay. just that one.
I think it should be. Katzenbach, yeah. There's certificate of compliances if you want to announce them that way.
Okay. Oh, these are, okay.
Yes.
All right, so we got two certificates of compliance. The first one is Peter Kazenbach, 310 Cornell Road.
Mr. Chairman, this was a gravel subdivision roadway constructed on this order of conditions. The project is probably about 3 years old now. Peter Katzenbach, 310 Cornell Road. This is certificate of compliance request. Boucher and Associates is the engineer of record. Report date is September 8th, 2022. File number was SC 802362. The site visit was on September 8th, 2022 as well. Description of the work, the owner has filed the request of certificate of compliance for file number SC 802362. The work was the construction of a gravel roadway that altered a portion of BVW. The gravel access and drainage swales have been fully established and seeded. The work in the buffer zone is stabilized as well. The existing old cart path was utilized to access across the BVW. The associated two replication areas are fully established with 75% wetland vegetation and stabilized. The design engineer has also provided a letter supporting all work has been completed as designed, and that is on record. So recommendations, Westport Conservation Commission should issue a full certificate of compliance for file number SC 802362 as all work is completed according to the plan of record. Peter Katzenbach.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from the table?
Comment, I think, Peter Katzenbach passed away last year.
Yes, he did.
And according to the assessors map, it's Catherine Katzenbach who now
Right,
is
his
the
wife, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. The original filing went under Peter when he was still alive, so.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
All right, do we have a motion?
So I'll move to issue the full certificate of compliance.
Second.
Phil, and that was Kevin, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous.
It's us and the camera.
Excuse me?
It's just us and the camera.
And everybody at home.
Well, ratings are gonna be through the roof with the new chair today, so.
Oh, they are.
Next certificate of compliance is with Frederick Eustis, is that his name?
Yes.
150 Cherry and Webb Lane.
Mr. Chairman, Frederick Eustace, 150 Cherry Webb Lane. This is certificate of compliance requested for file number SE 802576. This report is dated September 9th, 2022. The site visit was on the 8th of September 2022. The owner has filed the request certificate of compliance for the work completed, in the rear of his property. Owner installed a new well point along the rear dune of the site. This work is completed and the conditions in the order are satisfied. The area is restored as requested. For reference, Cherry and Webb seems to have better water as you get closer to that quaternary dune area, the oldest dune we got in that section. So Billy Webb's the guru of that area, has been advising these people to move their wells closer towards that dune. And in turn, they seem to be getting a better quality of water. As they move closer to Cherry and Webb Road, you tend to get a more tan and very foul-smelling kind of water that requires a very high-end filtration system. So what this was done was to help Mr. Eustace have a long-term, better water source for the property. So they basically excavated a small trench through the rear of the property to that point and placed the line back to the house. So that is the only disturbance that was done. And there was an existing footpath that they had done it on. So in the end, recommendations, Westport Conservation Commission should issue a certificate of compliance for file number SE 802576 as all work is completed according to the plan of record. That is all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to issue the certificate of compliance.
I second.
Bill and Bert. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Chris, do we have any unanticipated business before we get to the bills?
No, I do not.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
All right, so in the bills and minutes, we have a,
Go ahead, we do have that.
yeah, we're
before
gonna
us.
discuss that.
Yeah,
Do we-
briefly.
Okay.
This is the consultant's hydrogeologist we brought to the table for review of Brian Corey's proposed public water supply. The bill before you tonight is his statement or his invoice for work that he has done. It's a little disappointing. There was not some cooperation from the applicant. He seemed to just want to give the information that was presented to DEP's Water Supply Division. Mr. Campbell, our consultant, felt that there was some lacking data that would help fill in the blanks. So for reference, this report has been provided. I hope the members take a read through. But I think these are concerns we should address to DEP in their final consideration for this superseding order. And maybe it would be in order for us or for a member to pen a letter with our concerns that seem to be lacking from what we tried to retrieve from the applicant. So I think that would be something we could work towards to give the state an idea. And in the end, the applicant is going to have to provide this information to us if they propose to use this and operate this well system. I think this is information that we will be requesting of them, so I thought it would have been better for them to at least let us judge the depth of the wells, which we weren't even allowed to do. So I turn it back over to the members, Mr. Chairman.
Feels like you have anything?
Well, I just, so there's, I think, two things. One is, I would say that George Campbell's report made it, I'm going to say made it clear or expressed the opinion, and this is my, not his words, my word, that the applicant's geoanalysis was not worth the paper it was written on. It was so deficient, including the fact that apparently he didn't run tests on one of the wells that he claimed that he ran a test on, based on Mr. Campbell's and his hydrogeologist. So, I think to that extent, the funds to retain him were well spent, because I think we have a much better idea going forward, you know, as to what, we will be requiring. I think that, just strategically, you know, it puts us in the position of, if and when DEP moves forward, and we had taken the position that he could move forward with the replication. And, so I think at some point, you know, we should discuss, you know, whether or not, in light of everything we know now and everything we don't know now, you know, do we still, you know, think that is, you know, the right course, or not? And would we propose an alternative, you know, to DEP in their consideration? And just to say, I think there are reasons to go ahead with it, because it's a replication that has been waiting for a very long time, and we have no idea about when, if and when, these wells would ever be, Mr. Corey or the applicant would come back in front of us to apply for operation. When they do, if and when they do, I think that Mr. Campbell's report will be very valuable, but I do think that we should figure that out, what we want to do with this during the SOC process, including what Chris said, which was to get this additional information. But even without that information, it was a pretty damning refutation of what the applicant's consultant had asserted, which was that there was no hydrogeologic connection between the groundwater, between the bedrock well and the superficial aquifer. But
Yeah,
And Phil, these were the experts that came before us?
yeah, you
The
know,
two experts that came
Mr.
were so
Hinton.
eloquently,
Yeah.
well-spoken, and, okay.
Yeah,
I think what was abundantly clear out of Mr. Campbell's report is that obviously we lacked a lot of data. The data that he was looking for, he was not provided that data. And at the same time, we all know that you can present data in whatever fashion you want to help with your, I guess, agenda. So I think it was a good move to, at least to bring the consultant on board and to give us that, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a word to the wise for us next time, that you can't necessarily not distrust, but you should have an expert in your court, and certain circumstances arise where you can.
yeah. I mean, but he just pointed out in various different circumstances that the assertions the applicant's hydrogeologist made was totally inconsistent with fundamental principles of hydrogeology. You know, it was, it was eye-opening.
I mean,
Even in the absence of information, you know, it was like, I don't know, you know, in gravity, things don't fly up to the ceiling, you know? It was kind of like, so in the, water doesn't flow this way. Everybody knows that, don't they?
Well,
Anyway, I don't mean to disparage the individual, but it was just, I just, so anyway. So,
and I think as a commission, we have to continue to be cognizant of what's happening in town with our water supply, with our, you know, in a year like this year, which basically 9 out of the past 10 years, we've had severe droughts and difficulties in continuing for some households and businesses to keep water flowing, so.
yeah, and, yeah. And just to say, I mean, you know, this is after the fact information for us, so we didn't really use this in making our decision, so it's not as if we can come back and, you know, but I also think at some point, water supply people, we should consider, you know, submitting it to DEP just for the purpose of water supply people, because he does not have a final operating permit for those wells. And if our
Correct.
consultant is correct, then DEP might consider themselves requiring additional tests.
Would I hope someone present,
Yeah, you know, and.
at least to see them initiated so that you can verify that they actually put the test on that particular
The
well.
correct
Yeah.
wells, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What is the time period on those with the DEP stuff? I mean,
DEP has a number of days that, in their interpretation of what they require to act.
okay,
In the respect to this project, I thought they would have come back already now, stopping the clock and asking for Brian to address their concerns from that on-site, which they haven't, which usually would stop the clock and they wouldn't start again until Mr. Corey submitted that information. So that's what I was gonna ask Dan Gilmore in an email was, you know, they're running close to being over the time of when they're supposed to move forward with their, some sort of response. So I was gonna send an email to Corinne to see if they have heard anything, and, again, Mr. Corey didn't seem to be too cooperative in when we tried to inquire, so.
do we need to take any steps or make a motion to at least create
I
a
would
letter to
I would
DEP?
suggest to the board that we consider putting a letter together, and I could start something and have maybe Phil look at it, but just to address that, we think the state may have, should look at this a little closer if we're getting information that the applicant not necessarily conducted
Okay.
proper parameters to even enter into
Mhm.
the water supply people's submittal requirements.
Okay.
Was Brian Corey or his consultant copied on this Campbell report?
They are not at this time.
Because I think it might be worth it to see what their reaction is, but basically we should follow what Campbell says needs to be done. As
I would absolutely forward it to them and other parties, but I was waiting till
I think
we had a discussion about it, and once we discuss it, Bert, it becomes public record. So I believe after tonight, we can make it available to people.
Okay. So do you want to make a motion to begin drafting a letter to DEP based on our environmental consultants' findings or lack
Yes.
thereof? Do we have a motion for that?
I would say DEP is wetlands as well as the water supply division.
Wetlands and water supply.
Yes.
All right, so Phil made a motion, we'll get a second on that, but that obviously would be supplying a letter to DEP on the wetlands and public water supply departments.
I'll second that.
Phil made the motion, Kevin second. All in favor? Opposed?
And then make a motion to pay
Unanimous.
the invoice,
Do we have to
Mr. Chair.
tell the amount? Does it matter?
Yeah, say,
So we have an invoice in front of us for Campbell Environmental, which did that study on that parcel, in the amount of $8,910. Do we have a motion to pay?
Move to pay.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Unanimous. I just signed this, right? No one else needs to sign it, or? do
oh,
I
you can
wait?
pass it around. Go ahead, that'd be no problem.
I don't want to withhold the information, but I think it might be helpful before we start distributing it, just because it really wasn't part of our decision-making process,
Mhm.
to wait until we see what DEP is going to do,
That is fine.
you know, and whether it is just relevant to this, I mean, you know, how it will be used, because on the other hand, I think we need a little more discussion internally about what its significance is for the matter that's before the DEP right now.
Because technically, our only decision was on the replication, correct?
Right, and some of the auxiliary structures, like the pump house and that
Okay.
kind of stuff. Yeah,
But he can't move forward because there's an appeal, so his,
right.
he proceeds
appealing
at his
each other.
own risk,
Yeah.
so he kinda,
Right,
he
right.
kinda really isn't going to do anything, as Phil mentioned, until he gets the second, and that could go to another further
Yeah.
appeal if that was chosen, so.
Okay,
In the meantime, as Phil mentioned, that replication that is due to be done within 3-year time period, we're going on 5 years. Yeah, we're looking at 4.5 years, so not only has his former superseding expired, he is also still hasn't initiated work.
all right, we have another bill, WB Mason, for, total of $12.60. Got a motion to pay?
Motion to pay.
Second.
Phil and Kevin second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's it for the bills, I believe. Minutes from the 8:30 meeting. Unfortunately, I was absent from that meeting, so we do not have a quorum to take a vote on the minutes for 8:30, so we'll have to wait on those. Yeah, the June 7th, Phil was absent, Kevin and Bert, so guess we can't vote on that one.
No, we've been striking out.
There's
Maybe I'm gonna have to bring a cake.
August 2nd. No, Kevin was absent, so we didn't have anything on that. So, no, we still holding out on the minutes. All right. Do you have,
I have nothing, Mr. Chair.
that's it?
That's it.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All set, Leon. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.